Good evening from Vietnam, Lynn. Good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for spending your beautiful afternoon to join our program to share your amazing journey to our audience. And on behalf of the listeners around the world, I want to say thank you.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be with you. You know, I know you're doing some great stuff there, and I met some fantastic people when I was over in Vietnam in April. So it's a real pleasure.
Yeah, and I missed you last time. I wish that the next time that you travel with your program to this part of the world again, I would love to see you in person, have a cup of tea together. Okay?
Very English, yes.
Yeah.
Very nice. And equally,
Yeah.
if you come to England, you're very welcome to come and have a cup of tea at my house.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the invitation. And you came here. You know our people in our culture. It's very honor
Yeah.
for us if we can have you to share a little bit about who you are and the work you do for our audience. Would you please do that honor for us?
Yes, I came under the banner of Together We Can Change the World, which is a charity that just helps women and girls mostly, sometimes boys, but primarily women and girls, to gain an education if things would have got in the way of them doing that. And why it spoke to my heart is I've had a fantastic life because of my education. And one of the things I teach is, you know, always see your options in life. But if you don't have an education, you have less options. And so it felt unfair. So I really like what they're doing. So we're all speakers. And, you know, we got to raise money for the causes. We all pay our own fares. We raise money to go on the trip. And we get to meet some fabulous people that inspire us. So.
Lynn, you have a journey of beautifully, you know, of doing so many amazing things that you introduced to us only like less than 2 minutes, and that's not fair, okay? And as I shared with you before we do the recording, this program is for our audience to know, you know, how did you come up with the dream and pursue the dream of having of doing what you do today. So there will be a lot of time travel in this conversation.
Okay.
And I'll lead the way. I'll ask you a question after, okay? How does time travel sound to you?
It sounds very interesting. I've never done it. Why not?
So last time you came here, did you come to the middle of Vietnam called Da Nang City?
We did. We started off in Ho Chi Minh, and we also went up to Da Nang and Hanoi. So we travelled about a bit. Yeah, it was great.
Okay, so Da Nang is my hometown.
Great.
I was born there, and when you and 40 something years ago, it was a very small city, very poor city, devastated by the bombs that happened through the wars, right? And I was born in the family that also poor. My parents were engineer, but during that time, engineer was seen as a lower class than blue collar. So workers are the highest in in the society, in the social ranking back then.
Yes.
And so my family, one night we had electricity. Maybe the next night or two, we did not have electricity. So it's dark. Okay. So when it's dark, you let your imagination run wild. So my first dream about the world and the work that I want to do is I want to become an astronaut and travel into the moon. So I want to be able to use the light from the moon so that I can, bring that light back to my hometown. That way. But life take me to different direction, different path, and during the journey of the past 4.5 years, I interviewed so many people that in the space industry. One of them actually came to the moon and walked on the moon. So his name is Charlie. Yeah. So for you, Lynn, when you were little, what was a dream about the future works that Lynn is going to do?
I'm not so sure I thought about the work. I did know I wanted to be a social worker, but I was from a working class family, and we couldn't afford to go on holiday anywhere but in England. And when I went to secondary school, I was in a girls' grammar where people had more wealth, and a lot of my friends were going abroad. And I used to say to my mum, one day can we fly to Paris? Because that seemed like the height of excitement to go to Paris. And they used to laugh at me and say, oh, listen to our Lynn, she always wants, And I've had the privilege since of working in 20 countries. So before my mum died, she'd often laugh about, well, you got more than you dreamed, didn't you? Because I had that wonderful opportunity to be in so many places. And I mean, I've got a master's degree in social work, and I was a social worker initially in America. We went to live in America when we first married. My husband was doing a PhD in chemistry, and his supervisor took up a post there. So we went with him 10 days after we got married, all very exciting. And I worked there with a hospital team, and that was fantastic. And and that was my first kind of taste of really high quality teamwork. And then when I came back, I worked as a social worker here with children on what we call the at-risk register, which means often there's a lot of drug addiction issues for parents and things. And I was doing that for a little while, and I started to realise that you cannot, you know, my job was to work with the parents, but you can't change anybody's behaviour who doesn't want to change their behaviour themselves. And I just started to realise that either you have to kind of become a policewoman, which I considered, you know, because
policewoman.
Yeah, I did consider it. But then I thought, no, I want to be a counsellor, and I want to work with people who at least have taken that first step of wanting to make some changes in their life. And I initially trained as a marital counsellor, but I was very young. I was only 27 and I looked younger. And so people were a bit disappointed when they first got me, because they wanted somebody who looked wise, and they felt like they'd been given the daughter as a counsellor. But I suppose I hung on in there, and some of them could see past my age. And, you know, I did have two children then myself, so that helped. And it was after I started to see repetitive patterns in why relationships were failing. And after a while, I thought, you know, I think we're working with people too late. We're working with them when they're already distressed and they've sort of fallen out of love with each other. And so I decided to set up a night class, and I designed a night class just to help anybody who was interested really understand what were the common reasons relationships failed. And I put up my handmade posters on all my lamp posts in my local town. And I was worried nobody would come, and 40 people arrived for the workshop. And that kind of gave me the confidence to think there is a need there. And so my business, I didn't intend to be a speaker. It all grew from that place really. And then slowly it started to grow, and I ended up working on my own as a speaker for 10 years. And I can certainly tell you the story of how that grew. But after 10 years, I decided that two things. I thought I was starting to teach quite a lot about teamwork, and I'm in some quite creative teams like acting teams and things, but I hadn't been part of a corporate team for 10 years. So I thought, if I'm going to teach this, I have to do it myself. So I wanted to create a company. So I created a company with a colleague. And yes, anywhere our mouth was, and we still, you know, the company's now been sold, but we do still love each other. And they were my second family, and they're all coming round for Christmas next week. We're having a pretend Christmas. So that's kind of the story of how it all began. And I suppose I'm very practical. So I've done a lot of work in different psychotherapies, but I've chosen not to be a psychotherapist, not because I think it's wrong. It's just that I had a very inspiring mentor, and she said, the trouble is each psychotherapy sometimes think that it's the truth. And I don't like anything that believes it's the only truth. So I thought, well, what I'm going to do is just learn as much as I can about all of them, and then just take the practical things from each one. And I think that's why my business was successful, because I could bring in psychological theory, but I always tied it to a story that people could relate to, something that happened in my life, or, you know, they could picture happening in their lives next year. And I think it was that practicality of it that people liked. I'm not a motivational speaker, you know. I don't kind of get people that excited, but when they leave, they're very reflective and they say they've learned a lot. So that's where I come from.
let's hold on from there. Okay. I wanna start with that one first. Then we travel time back again. But
Yeah.
you mentioned about bringing theory and
Yeah.
the power of storytelling and
Yeah.
make it something practical for the pupil to be able to absorb, to be able to remember, to be able to, you know, to find something that they can start doing, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
also inspiring, you know, like inspirational speaking in different way. Okay, I want to ask you if that is something that no worry, Lynn, if that is something that you were inherited, you know, from your family in the DNA, in nature, or through the nature when you grow up and then you starting to acquire that skill yourself.
I think, yeah, I probably learned it from my mum. My mum was a really good storyteller, and she could tell stories in a, you know, a funny way, and often about herself, and you know, make people laugh. And so that I would have seen that when I was very young. And we were also, she was very playful, so you know, we used to have fancy dress parties, and we had to dress up as animals and all sorts of strange things. So that probably gave me, although I'm a quiet person, it gave me the confidence to, when I'm speaking, act things out a little bit and put in different voices, and you know, just help people get the message in those ways. So I'm very grateful to my mum for that. Yeah.
So if so, she's the one that having a lot of influential in your life, role model in your life, right? So any piece of wisdom from her that you still remember at early age, still remember until now?
I don't think it's kind of like a wisdom in what she said. She was just a very loving person, and I think the thing that perhaps sums up the messages she gave me was, she said when she died, I've got a lot of cousins, and one of them was talking to me, and he said, oh, you know, Auntie Bertha was my favourite auntie. And I said, oh, that's nice. I said, why? And he said, she always made you feel like you were the most important person in the room. And I thought, well, that's a wonderful thing to have said about you, that, you know, it doesn't matter who you meet, who you're with, everybody's got the story. We all want to be loved. We all want to feel important. And she just, her eyes would light up whenever anybody walked in. So that's a gift, isn't it? You know,
It is, it is. And I think that your life, you're also having that gift from her. If through what I listened to this conversation so far, right? You've been, I'm very nosing here, so you will see me riding up and down. I'm old fashioned. So along every job that you do, you try to give it the best. Then you realize that is, you know, what you do, it could be improved in a different way. Then you move to the next, you know, area. Then you become a counselor, right, for children, and then you realize that is something that still not, you know, fixing it at the root cause. Then you move into the next one, move to the next one, and to me, it's at the core of that is you want to provide the best quality of care, quality of service to fix the issue for the clients that you serve. So they are important also. Yeah.
yeah, I think part of it is when I'm there, I mean, I really love being with people, and I learn a lot from people. I mean, I'm not just the teacher, so I facilitate a lot of discussions, and people tell me stories, and so everywhere I go, yes, I'm passing something on, but I'm picking up something new. So that's both wonderful for me, and it means that what I'm offering has actually come from thousands of people over my lifetime. You know, their stories, things that have cemented a half-formed idea for me. So it's a collective offering, really.
And Lynn, in my journey of interviewing experts around the world, right, we interview over 1,200 experts in 100 countries, 7 continents. And one thing easily seen out of amazing experts and leaders are their ability to welcome newness in their life.
Yeah.
So if change happened and we responded to change, we becoming a reactive to the change. But when you have the muscle of newness, you are creating change. You are the one who, build change and spread change, right? And for you, you just mentioned earlier that you move from one row to the next row to the next row. You talk to a lot of people, so you can acquire their stories, their wisdom, their works, and so that you can make it something new and then continue to spread your works in a more impactful way. So I want to link newness and its
Yes.
benefit into your life so that we can help other people when they think of something new, they can starting to welcome the new things to happen instead of afraid of new things.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are a bit concerned about change because many of us have brought from our upbringing worries about whether we're good enough. We feel like we have to be perfect or please everybody or different kind of core beliefs. And when a change comes along, we're worried that we won't be able to perform in the way we have in the past. And it's true, because we'll be on the learning curve. We won't for a little while. But if you can just think, but that's really normal. And what's special about me is I'm brave enough to cope with that slight discomfort while I'm still learning. And as long as you have not been raised to be afraid to ask for help, I think if people have been raised to afraid to ask for help, then it makes it a very difficult journey. They don't want to say they don't understand, and they think, oh, somebody's shown me once, I can't ask again, they'll think I'm stupid. Whereas perhaps what I'm quite good at doing is being able to say, I'm sorry, can you show me again? Can you help me? I don't understand this. Thank you, that's so nice of you to help. And most people do want, they like to help. They like to feel that they're doing something useful. So you're helping both of you in a way. And I think that's what you have to do to embrace change. Just not be afraid of the fact you've got to go back on the learning curve a little bit, and accept help from whoever will give it to you.
Like you mentioned earlier, that if we are not in the family that promoting, the idea of ask for help, so it's really hard for us to open ourselves to ask for help, right? So if I'm coming from that background, I'm asking for help is something not in my nature.
Yeah.
How can I starting to embrace the idea of newness, of hey, open and ask Lynn for help, open and ask God for help, and starting to take baby steps like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You've just taken the words out of my mouth. I was actually going to say you have to take baby steps. You're not suddenly going to change your whole persona, but you think, who do I trust the most? Okay, I'll ask them for a little bit of help. But then when you find that nothing terrible happens, in fact, it was quite nice, and you feel that you get closer to people, then you're able to take another risk and think, well, maybe I'll try somebody who, I don't know that well, but I just sense that they're a warm person. And you just keep testing out the ground rather than doing something so big that it would set off the stress response in you. But,
wow.
Yeah.
I note in here a few words, keywords, and one of the keywords is patterns. Okay, so pattern. The second keyword is realize. So you mentioned that when as a social worker, you start to realize that this part of work needs to improve. So you move into the next one. Then you realize that for you to have at that role, then it's to lay up the process, so that you need to move to the next row so that you can create a prevention or create change earlier, something like that, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people doing one job over and over for years, and they're too comfortable with the job and not realizing, there could be more added on to the things they do. So for you, where did that strain of realizing improvements or additional things you could do, that realization, how did it happen?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I don't know. I've got an older sister who was also an inspiration. So, she was head girl first, and she was just very good at. She became a teacher, but she was a really enthusiastic teacher. Some teachers sometimes get a bit jaded, and she never lost her love of working with children and finding creative ways to help them. And so I think I always wanted to be like my big sister. I admired her, and perhaps that gave me the courage. And my mum, again, my dad was very cautious, you know, it wasn't his fault, it was part of his upbringing, but my mum was the one who, my dad would say, no, don't risk it, don't risk it. And my mum would go, no, don't be silly, just have a go, you know. So she would just influence us more. So.
And when you've been training for couples for a long time, and for teams for a long time, and then you say that you wanted to train for team in the organization. Yeah. And because you never do the business for organization, it's one of the best way to do it is to create a company for yourself, so that you can have that experience, so that you can use that experience to come into company to you know, to start bringing your expertise there. Yeah. And when did you have that idea?
I think I just feel that, you know, to have credibility, you have to talk about things that you've experienced. And so it didn't feel fair to start talking about building great teams when I'd only done it in unusual teams, not in corporate teams. And corporate teams are hard, you know, and when you've got a boss, you know, and I'd seen my own children, you know, I've got two beautiful, you know, clever kids who are now, you know, in their 40s, and they each have wonderful partners. And I'd seen those four young people at times have a not good boss and seen the impact it had on their happiness and persona. And I'd also seen all four of them who had a good boss. And it was like day and night. And I just kind of, I think that was an inspiration. I wanted my children and other people's children to have more positive experiences at work. And to do that, I needed to have the credibility with leaders. And my biggest audience actually ended up being the CEOs of SMEs, because I really like people who'll set up their own business. It takes a lot of courage. It's hard. And I know that from my own experience. But they're also able to be flexible. Whereas sometimes if you're in a very big corporation, you don't realize that some of your thinking has got a little bit, oh, we can't do that because, you know, the powers that be wouldn't agree. Whereas when you're in a smaller company, they're just more versatile. And I really like that. And I work for Vistage. They probably don't have them in Vietnam, but they're very big in England, across America, Australia, Malaysia. And
what's the company name?
It's called Vistage. VIS. Yeah, Vistage, TAGE. And they basically bring together CEOs in groups of 15, and it's a development program. They support each other. They become like a non-executive board for each other, but they bring in speakers on topics they want, and they have a mentor. And I actually was the person for a while who was training the mentors who were helping the CEOs. So, you know, I was learning that way as well about some of the challenges they were facing. So
you've been working with a lot of good leaders who want to contribute and becoming better and make more impact in their lives, right? So what is a common traits that you appreciate from those aspiring leaders, Lynn?
I'm really lucky actually, because the last few years I only work with people I really want to work with. So I've just been working with some really fabulous people, but there's a real mixture out there, isn't there? There are people who could be really good leaders, but they've just not had the opportunity to learn yet. And there are some people who are just not interested in people and shouldn't be leading others. And it's a bit like when I was a social worker, you're not going to change them. They'll always find a reason to listen and think it's not relevant for them, or we're being naive or something. So I just decided, as I'm in my 60s now, you know, in the time I've got left, I will work with people who are prepared to go in the space of becoming the best person they can. And that requires you sometimes to get feedback about yourself as a leader and face the fact that not everybody thinks you're perfect, and reflect on what they say. And you don't have to change, but feedback's just information. And I suggest people play a statistics game with feedback, because, you know, as a leader, you'll never make everybody happy, but you need to know that you're taking the majority of people along with you. And if you're not, you shouldn't be leading, really.
Yeah. So when you say that leaders want to be the best version of themselves, right?
Yeah.
And you want to work with those kind of leaders. So define best version of themselves for us, so that maybe if I want to lead that direction. So
well, I teach a lot about emotional intelligence and leadership, and I suppose the simple version is they're really interested in expanding their own personal awareness, which is a big part of EI. They're prepared to. I think an exceptional leader does have to learn to coach, not because coaching is the best leadership style, but it's the hardest. It requires the use of the most emotional intelligence competencies. And if you learn to coach people, yes, in a crisis or when the team first forms, you might need to be directive, but it gives you all the skills and knowledge you need for two other very helpful leadership styles. One is the participative, which most young people demand. They don't want to just be bossed around. They want to feel as though they've got something to offer as well. And it gives you everything you need for one called the affiliative leadership style, which is about creating harmony. But you need a bit more to coach as well. So I think I'm looking for people who are prepared to go on a personal awareness journey and learn some practical skills as well. And if they'll go in that place, they can do anything. They can achieve so many wonderful things. I mean, I've met some really inspiring leaders. I really have. So.
If they wanted to get into that aspiring journey, how can they start? I think.
Well, I suppose there'll be quite a few around the world of the groups like Vistage, but you just need one that has a very kind of open outlook. It's not just one individual who's trying to has his or her own image of leadership. And I think what I like about Vistage is because it's such a global organisation, there's so much information coming into the organisation that's kind of getting passed on. You can't get straitjacketed. So just try and find something that hopefully has an international feel, because that way you'll be getting the best from Vietnam, the best from other Southeast Asian countries, and then also different inputs from the world, which may not always work in your culture, but some of it does, and it's different, and you can return the favour to them. And I suppose it gives me hope for the world that if we can collaborate really well in business and you really get to know people across boundaries, I think that's the way we'll end wars, because none of us will start listening to all the stereotypes that, cause wars. So, yeah.
I think that for a lot of us, we've been in the management era for long, then the leadership era, we just started for a couple of decades, right? Yeah. And now AI is coming and disrupting a lot of, like what we've been knowing in the past. So I think there's a lot for us to learn out there. A lot of people worry about their job, about, how they can be managing people or leading themselves. We're in that new era of AI. So where do you see it?
I'll be honest, I'm a little bit of a dinosaur when it comes to my husband is actually really into AI, but I do think it's a difficult one, and I wouldn't pretend to help people with navigating that. But what I would say is people are always just looking for sincerity, and most people want some human contact as well. So, okay, take the best of AI, but don't be persuaded to lose what your company might be offering, which is the kind of the humanity of what you can offer them. It might be slightly more costly, but just think very carefully before you take out the human element, because I would pay more to have an interaction with a person than have to talk to a computer. I just would. And they drive me crazy at times. So yes, we've got to progress. I do understand that, and they will bring some wonderful things. But companies have to hold on to ways to stay connected to the customers in some human way as well. Even if it's just sending out little videos where they chat to them now and then, and there really is at least one helpline where you can talk to a person, and things like that. It doesn't even have to be massive, but just don't let it take over your life and let the shiny technology forget that at the end of the day, we all just want connection. That's what we're looking for. So
I'm sure there's a lot of people who would love the profession that you are in, would love to be, you know, a speaker, a trainer, a facilitator, a coach, a therapist, right? And if with your years of experience and you would want to give them some advice so they can help them to fast track their career, get into the career of success and happy and fulfilling, what is that something that Lynn would give to our audience?
I think you have to face the fact that you must want to give the message more than you want to be a speaker. So sometimes, you know, somebody just thinks, oh, I want to be a speaker, and then they're trying to look for something to speak about. Okay, they may be quite good, but it'll never absolutely come from the heart. So I think you need to start by thinking, what is actually moving, you know, what's happening in the world that's having an impact on me that I care about, and find a way to talk about that, because then you will speak from your heart and people will relate to you. And I think you have to stop thinking you're going, you know, worrying about, will I make lots of money? You might do, and that'd be a bonus. But, you know, I did loads of free talks when I was new to it to just try and gain some credibility. And even when we set up our company, we would offer free places, because just bombarding people with lots of information about how great you are, they don't know if you're great unless they see you in action. They don't know if they feel safe unless they're with you. So I think you have to create opportunities for them to see you and trust you, and that will cost money. And I think it's very hard. I mean, I was lucky, because if I'd been the only breadwinner, I don't think I could have set up my business. But I was married, and we just, you know, chose not to have holidays and buy things we might have wanted, because I didn't make any money for the first 2 years. And then I did start to make money, but you've got to be able to get through that difficult period as well. You just have to utterly believe your message, because that's what will get you through that period as well.
Lynn, question. A lot of startups die within the first year because of people don't have the tenacity to, you know, to hold on to it a little longer, or so many stress with, you know, continuing the business that you see no money coming in yet, right?
Yeah.
So what message did you talk to yourself for the for that 2 years in order for you not to quit, but to hold on to the idea and continue, you know, that path?
I think, I mean, as I said, I was lucky because, you know, I could still eat. And if I understand that if you've got a family and there's questions about that, you do have to make choices. For some people, I think they're better to try and go down to a 3-day week, something like that. So you've got some stability to get through those difficult periods, and then test the waters out. And, you know, you may have to do work at your weekends and things, rather than just suddenly like giving up your job and having all that fear. I think because it is hard out there, and I think it's getting harder actually. There's so many messages coming at you. So I think, you know, if you can find a job that you like well enough, and if you've always been fair with people and you've always worked hard, if you go to your boss and say, you know, I'd like to work a 3-day week, they might say no, but a lot of people don't want to lose you if you're a really good worker, and if they'll, you know, you can find a compromise. And then sometimes you can even offer to say, well, in return, you know, I do some training for the company, and I would do it at a, you know, at cost or something. You be creative with a way to make things a win-win, because you have to get the testimonials really. And I suppose my second tip is, I just asked everybody to write a testimonial when I'd done, and I used those to convince people to give me a trial next time. Because me just saying it isn't going to work, but somebody they know having said, I must admit, I didn't want to go on this workshop. I thought, oh God, what's she got? But actually, I was quite surprised, and it has, you know, then that brings people in to overcome their own cynicism. And everybody's so busy, you know, it's really hard to fit in going on events, isn't it? So maybe taster sessions as well of what you can do. So you're not having to say, you know, you have to come for 2 days. You're saying, you know, come to this breakfast, You know, all you have to do is perhaps buy breakfast if you can't afford to give them breakfast, but what you'll get in return is you know, an hour of learning and sharing and things like that. So
and potential testimonials, right? And Lynn, I really love the way that you think. You mentioned about trying something and trying to negotiate, be creative, and you mentioned the word "I think" many times in this conversation. And that every time that we heard people saying that thing, it's like something like shining inside of our head and our hearts. Because my wife and I, we always love to help people to improve their ability to think. And one, because we believe that our thinking has so many things that impacting, you know, our thinking these days. So it's going down instead of going up, you know, for a lot of people. And each conversation like this is a way for us to bring insights, tips, and secrets that can help people to improve their ability to think back. So Lynn, the question we have for you is, how have you been growing your ability to think that you can share to our audience?
I think I think I might have mentioned that on the little video for Vietnam Women's Day. I've had my best education by asking questions. And when I find somebody who I just like, or I admire something that they're doing, or I just think they have a skill that I think is interesting, I just ask them if they'll help me. And there's not many people in the world who won't help you if you're not asking for a lot. And I just say, what would really help me is, can you help me understand what you think and what you do that's enabled you to, you know, achieve that or learn that? And you have to understand what somebody thinks before you can make sense of anything they do. I mean, just as a little example, when we lived in Malaysia for a few years, and I coached a man who I really admired called Mr. Heng, and he had a very complicated job, but he was always sunny. And I mean, some of the complexity he was dealing with, I'm just thinking, I don't know how this man is not kind of awake all night, you know. And I said to him one day, you know, what do you think, Mr. Heng, that means that you can cope so resiliently with everything you're doing? And he said, well, the way I see it is, I think I'm paid good money to solve problems. So when any problem comes along, I just think, oh, good, a way to help me earn my money. And he does, it was exactly. And I thought, yeah, you had to know that that's what he's thinking for him to cope with so much stress. Because most of us would be thinking, oh, not something else to bother me. And he's thinking, oh, I can earn my money. So, yeah, ask people what they think. And you don't have to always do what they think, but just sometimes it just gives you a different perspective on something, or makes you laugh, or when you're particularly down, you remember it, and it just lifts you that there's people in the world who could deal with things differently. So
beautiful. A few last question for this conversation. I want to bring you to first two different points in your life. Yeah. One is when you started that night classes.
Yeah.
Okay. And you did not even know how many people are going to show up the first night. Yeah. So I want to bring you to the morning of that night.
Yes.
On that day, okay? And probably Lynn was nervous about who's coming, how's it going to turn out. So now you and me of 2025 came to that room. Yeah. And you're going to talk to that Lynn, and whatever year that was, about her decisions of creating that night classes, right? So what is that you're going to tell her?
I suppose I'm just going to tell her that it doesn't matter if it fails this time. You will find a way to get these messages out, because you know that they're really important. So just go along. And if there's only 3 people there, well, you'll make 3 friends and you'll have a great chat. And the class couldn't actually operate if there wasn't 12 there. That was the rule. So we would have just had to sit there and had a little chat, and then I would have gone home. So I just kind of tried to think that even the worst that could happen, I would have still gained something, which would have been somebody else's stories and insight. I think you have to be not afraid to fail in a way. you know, and not think that's an, if you think that failure is some indication of your inner soul, that's when you're going to lose it. It's not. The planets weren't combining at that point for you. Everybody was too busy. Next year it'll happen. You just have to believe there will be a way. So that's what I'd tell her. Well done. Get in there and just have a chat with whoever turns up.
Now you travel to the secondary, like little girl, okay?
Yeah.
When she told mom that she wanted to go to Paris, okay? Remember that, right? And now you and I talked to that young little Lynn, and if there's one thing or two things that you want to tell her to, maybe in the future she needs to make change, you know, something, whatever, that you can give her that piece of wisdom, what is that you're going to tell her?
I think I'd just tell her that she's going to have the most amazing life, better than she could ever possibly have pictured, which is true. But also I think I just want her to never get cynical about life. Just always, if you always see the best in people, then you will end up having a good life. You'll have one or two bad experiences, because there's some people out there who are not kind, but don't let the bad things put you off, because I do utterly believe there is more good in the world than bad. So just keep moving on, and you'll meet the next nice person, and something good will happen as a result. And you have to believe that, or she'll let the times you get knocked affect you. It'll affect your courage. Yeah. So I think she has to carry on being that wonderful, naive, smiley little girl that she was.
And I hope that every girl, every boy can carry that naive little smile with them, right? So that is something that's important for them to go into the world. A lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunity and possibility in there. Yeah. 2.5 months ago, my wife and I, we bought a website called sustainabilitymind.com. And this is the one that my wife Vivian, she wanted to help other people to really unite the way to think about sustainability. And we're going to start small with definition. And if I look at the way that you do, every work that you do, you try to build something that's sustainable for the clients, for the community. And then with that together, we can change the world. You want to have something that could, you know, bring something sustainable for those little girls. And hopefully that ripple effect is going to create more change positively to the world, right? So if I ask you to define a sustainability mind, a mindset that can help people think about sustainability, right? So what is that to you, is a sustainability mind?
Gosh, that's a hard question. I think sustainability is just something that means that when you've left, the people who are still there have gained something that they can then work with and build. So it could be knowledge, but it could be that you've, you know, bought the fish so that they can actually set up a fish farm. But rather than just thinking, let's go in and help them, and you help them by, I don't know, giving them food or clothes, but then when that's run out, they're still back where they were. So you just have to think deeply about what you can offer them, that when you're no longer there, we'll still be reaping some rewards for them. So
yeah. To give them the tools, or give them the fish for them to go fishing themselves, right?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. It's like, you know, it wasn't just that Together, you know, built like a computer suite for a school that we were helping, but then they managed to bring in some people from America who'd teach them how to use the CAD software, so that when the teenagers left, they could actually earn a living, and then they could teach that to pupils in the school. So if you just given them the computers, okay, it might have been quite interesting, but maybe when they broke, you know, nobody would have earned any money to repair them, and it could have gone nowhere. So you have to think, how is this going to to pay for itself and become self-sustainable. Yeah.
And I think that what you guys did is also bring it to them the seed of ideas, the seed of hope, the seed of believing that, you know, kindness everywhere, good people everywhere, and when they're growing up, they can think beyond what the limitation of or challenging that they've been having every day, and go beyond it, right? So thank you for doing that. The last question is about the future. Okay, yes. And if you look at all the people that all the skills that you've been helping people to improve and make and get ahead of in the games, into, you know, in the work, in life, right? And now you boil it down to one skill only that Lynn thinks is very important for anyone who listens to this conversation heading to 2026. They need to start to learn or to master, to make the best out of that skill so that they can build something good and fulfilling. What is that?
I think they just have to stay really open to learning, and learning from people who are different to them as well. It's very tempting to try to learn from people you admire because they're like you, and there's nothing wrong with that, but if that's all you'll do, you'll just keep getting the same kind of thing. So just be open to learning from people who you don't even like, you know, or just be interested in everybody else's story, because I've learned very useful things from people who, you know, I don't want to be my best friend, but I've still heard their stories and they've offered me something that has had value in my life. So stay open to learning from everybody. That's what I'd say.
It's really hard to do that, right? So I say that's the last question, but if is it okay for me to ask one last?
Yeah.
All right. Because you mentioned that it's not easy for us to learn from the people we dislike, right? So easier for me to learn from the people that I'm familiar with. Now open that reservoir to learn from the people that on the opposite side of our opinions, of our belief.
Yeah.
And how can I do that, then?
I think, you know, one of the 7 habits of highly effective people is seek first to understand before you attempt to be understood. And if you go in rather than thinking, you know, I've got to make you change your mind because you're misguided, that's what's caused wars in the world. You know, if you could go in just thinking, the only way we'll ever have real peace is if I understand how you see things, so that then maybe I can present my arguments in a different way that could actually make more sense to you. And so it's you'll go in with a different, you're going in to both learn and influence, whereas sometimes we only want to go in and influence them to see how misguided we are. I mean, I've learned this from being a mediator. I'm an accredited mediator, and I often go in, and on one side there's somebody who's saying, if you could get them to start doing this, we get somewhere, and the other person saying, get them to stop doing this, and we're just not moving. And I need both of them to have a genuine wish for once in their lives to hear a different point of view. And then we can find a way forward. Yeah.
You know, imagine if everybody could do that, right? How different our world is going to be.
It would be fantastic, wouldn't it? But I'm a realist as well, and we might not get perfection, but I still think we're on the right trajectory in the world.
Yes, yes. I hope that one conversation at a time, one person change at a time, one perspective, you know, move at a time would be wonderful, you know, and that give us the energy and the motivation to do conversation like this. So thank you so much for being so kind to join our program, to share your story, to share a lot of wisdom and insights in this beautiful conversation. And I wish you all the best. Enjoy your Christmas reunion with your colleagues, your friends, and say hello to your family for us.
Thank you so much. You said I'd have fun, and I have had fun. Thank you very much. It's been
Thank
a real
you.
pleasure to talk to you, Ha. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.